From risingapple.com, headline: 3 prospects the Mets should have protected from the Rule 5 draft. The Mets might lose 3 top 30 organizational prospects in the Rule 5 draft. We'll see who that is. The Rule 5 draft gives teams the opportunity to find hidden gems that other organizations might not believe in very strongly. New York Mets haven't picked many notable players, but players like Ryan Presley and Garrett Whitlock are among notable names selected in the last decade. In order to protect prospects from being selected in the Rule 5 draft, teams add prospects eligible for it onto their 40-man roster. Mets did this with former top prospect Alex Ramirez. While Ramirez has obvious upside, it was definitely a bit surprising to see him added, as players selected had to stay on the 26-man roster all season long. So make a player like Ramirez, who struggled in high A Brooklyn this season, is unlikely to be selected. Ramirez was the only player added to the Mets 40-man roster, but should that not have been the case? Here are 3 players the Mets should have protected from being selected in the Rule 5 draft by being added to the 40-man roster. Number 1, Jeremiah Jackson. The Mets acquired Jackson in the trade that sent Dominic Leone to the Angels. The Mets getting anything for Leone was surprising. Landing someone that actually looked like a decent prospect was shocking. Jackson was in the midst of a decent year for Double-A Rocket City in the Angels organization before the trade, but elevated his game in the Mets system after he was acquired. The 23-year-old slashed .264 with a .344 on-base percentage, .457 slug, with 7 home runs and 24 RBIs for Double-A Binghamton. He's far from perfect, as his 50 strikeouts in 37 games for Binghamton would indicate, but he showed flashes of being a really solid player. What's most exciting about Jackson's potential is positional versatility. This season alone, Jackson played 5 different positions, and that's not including the 5 games he appeared in as a DH. He's primarily middle infield, but also played third base and both corner outfield positions. He looks like a player with a real MLB future as a utility player off the bench. It was surprising to see the Mets risk losing the 23-year-old to the draft, as there's a pretty good chance a team out there will take a flyer on him with that versatility in mind. I would mention that Jackson was picked up by former general manager of the Mets, Billy Epler, and he drafted him back, I think, 2018. Here's number 2. And he was picked up for Dominic Leone. This player was picked up for Eduardo Escobar. This is Coleman Crow. While Jackson took off in the Mets organization after the team acquired him, Crow has yet to appear in a game in the Mets minor league system. He underwent Tommy John surgery, which knocked him out for the season, with the exception of just 4 starts, and could miss all of next season as well. Crow's injury might make some think teams will avoid him, but I actually think it will be the exact opposite. This gives opposing teams the opportunity to stash him essentially for free. In the offseason, the 60-day IL does not exist. Everyone who's on the 60-day IL has been added to the 40-man roster. While that's how things work in the offseason, players on the 60-day IL do not have to be on the 40-man roster when spring training begins. With Crow likely out for the entire season, if a team selects him, he could just spend the year in which he'd have to be on the major league roster on the IL, and then resume pitching in the minors in 2025. Let's have 33 players on that 40-man roster after adding Jackson. They had plenty of room to add Crow throughout the offseason, and on the off chance that they don't, they could have traded or waived him if they wanted to use him to open a spot. The 22-year-old is far from a household name, as he ranks 29th on the Mets prospect list, according to MLB Pipeline. But he clearly has some value, as he was the main player the Mets received in the Eduardo Escobar trade as one of the organization's top 30 prospects. It's possible he goes unclaimed, but this feels like roster mismanagement. I would mention he's another player that was drafted by Billy Epler from the Angels. So obviously the new president of baseball operations, Dave Stearns, did not want to keep him. Okay, so that is something to keep, something to understand. Somebody that could have been an advocate for both of these first 2 players, in Crow, Coleman Crow, and of course Jeremiah Jackson. They're not there now, so he could have just been an advocate for them to stay on the roster. But then he's not there because he resigned, or was fired, or whatever. The last player is Justin Jarvis. Jarvis is yet another player the Mets traded for this past season, as the team acquired him in exchange for Mark Canha and a one-on-one deal. While Canha flourished for Milwaukee, Jarvis had his struggles for the Mets, posting an 8.04 ERA and 9 starts for AAA Syracuse. It should be noted that the man responsible for acquiring all 3 of these prospects Billy Epps is no longer with the organization. Despite that, Jarvis felt like a player David Stearns was going to protect because of their Milwaukee connection. Stearns selected Jarvis in the 5th round of the 2018 MLB draft, and he remained with the Brewers for several years while Stearns was in charge. Another reason Jarvis' omission was a bit surprising is the fact that he's ranked number 15 on the Mets prospect list. Prospects lists aren't everything, but there are reasons why he's ranked where he is and why the Mets felt good enough to trade Mark Canha for him alone. With how poorly Jarvis did in AAA, it's certainly possible he doesn't get selected, but the Mets feeling the need to protect Alex Ramirez, who had struggles of his own at a much lower level, and not Jarvis, who is clearly more advanced. There's a chance none of these players get selected, and there's an even bigger chance none of these players are super impactful. Despite that, it was surprising and disappointing to leave some talented players available to be selected by other teams when they had a ton 40-man roster space. Now, the thing about Jarvis, obviously, Stearns drafted him, and he's probably been watching him this past season when he pitched for the Brewers. So he knows this player. So this was the one player that he knows a lot about, and obviously, if Epple was here, he probably would have said, let's keep him, because we got all the space on the roster, on the 40-man roster. So these three guys are very, very interesting. Very, very interesting guys to sort of look at. But they're not barnstorms. They're not guys that are going to like make or break your farm system, to be honest with you. Alex Ramirez is a different story because the Mets invest a lot of money in him, and he struggled last year. But that doesn't mean, and he's only 20 years old. So he's much younger than these other guys. So the Mets have a different attitude just as an organization about where they feel his development is. It seems like the issue with him is his attitude from the things I've read. So, let me know what you think about this video. Of course, please subscribe to Prospect Hut, and I'll see you later.